Today, we're going to talk about how feelings lie, but your data doesn't, because you need to make data-driven decisions in business. We need to make sure that when we are making decisions, it's based on data. You are not your business, right? Instead of looking at like, oh, what's the bare minimum that I have to do? Like when you are starting and creating a business, I think that the better question to ask is, what would be unreasonable for me to not fail?
Welcome to Swift Coaches Academy, a podcast dedicated to bringing health and wellness professionals the uncensored truth behind what it really takes to succeed in the health industry with me, your host, Xenia Wood. As an accredited exercise physiologist and business owner for almost a decade, I'm on a mission to transform the lives of ambitious health professionals like you who want more and are ready to take action to create incredible impact in your careers and unlock financial freedom in your business. So join me as I speak candidly with industry leaders about the struggles and successes from within the trenches through thought-provoking conversations.
Alrighty, I am super fired up for today's episode because I've been having so many conversations recently with health business owners who are in their feelings and not basing any of their decisions in business on data. And it can be such a challenging like spiral or downhill or just a misdirection if you are just going on gut feel or what you think is right as opposed to looking at the data. So today we're going to talk about how feelings lie, but your data doesn't, because you need to make data-driven decisions in business, right? When you are feeling overwhelmed, the last thing you want to be doing is leaning into your feelings, because even though you might feel certain things and your guts might be telling you something, that doesn't mean that it's true. There could be some sort of misdirect, and our feelings are not the truth. Our feelings are our truth at that moment, and they're not based on data, okay? So I have had some clients, and there's one at the moment who feels like they want to like literally burn their business to the ground. It's super successful. It's doing really well. And this person's had some like personal stuff go on, and they're like, I don't know if I can do it. And everything else is clouding their judgment. And so they're in their feelings. They're not looking at the data. And there are going to be times in your business where either like internal to your business or personally in your life, there are going to be things that impact how you feel about your business. But we need to make sure that when we are making decisions, it's based on data, right? We need to stop riding this emotional roller coaster of our business. You are not your business, right? You and your business are separate entities. And I find that it's really hard, especially in the start, and especially when things are going well, you're like riding this emotional roller coaster, like going up to the top, and you're like, yeah, this is great, this is awesome. And then something hits and it doesn't go well. And then you're like, oh, and you feel it in your stomach, and you just like spiral or unwind, and you basically are on this like up down cycle of your own emotional state based on potentially your business performance and then how you feel as a result of that. So we need to be zooming out and assessing the data and make sure that we're not being fueled by and making decisions when we're in our emotions, because they can swing wildly. We can feel like really great in the morning because we had a great training session and everything went well. And then we like see our email inbox or someone cancels, and then instantly we're like, oh, and we're like, everything sucks, right? But like 20 minutes ago, you were feeling really great. So it's really important to come back to the data. And I'm going to give some examples of this and what I would do in these situations based on some of our clients inside our Biz Academy program at the moment and what I've spoken to them about. One thing I want to talk to with this as a bit of an example or an analogy is like, let's say you go on one date and it didn't work. You're not going to say dating is the problem. You're ideally not going to say men or women or whoever you choose to date are the problem. You are also not the problem. The problem is you have one teeny tiny data point of one experience that went one way, one time. right? If you had 100 experiences and 100 different, of course, there would be some dates that went really well and really terribly and everything in between because you've got so many different data points. So the first thing I think is that a lot of the times when I have students who come to me or even people in my DMs who are like, like I'm doing everything or like, I don't know what to do, what is the right thing to do? It's like, okay, well, what are you doing? If you say I'm doing everything, like you can't be doing everything. Like, what is everything? Let's get clear because I'm doing everything is an emotion fueled statement because we logically know that we can't be doing everything, right? So, what are you doing and what are the results of what you are doing right now? And I had a call with a student recently about like things not working for her and she feels like she's doing everything and she feels like she's not the data would say that she's not getting clients right now. Okay, that's the data. But then we reverse engineer and go, what's the problem? It's like, oh, I feel like, I'm not doing enough. The marketing's not working. Okay. So we have to reverse engineer, like, what is it? What is actually happening? What are the actions that are being taken about the marketing that means it's not working? And then we dived into, oh, well, like I'm not putting my offer out there and because I don't feel like it's ready, right? So now it's actually not the marketing that's the problem. It's the fact that they don't feel confident in the offer or the thing that they're pitching or presenting. And maybe this is how you feel at the moment too, right? So it can be quite like complex in terms of like our brains lead us down these garden paths of like this isn't working or the marketing sucks. But it's like, okay, if we have a look at like how many people have you put this offer or marketed to, and we talk marketing, we talk presenting an offer or talking on social media or creating content or bringing people into your world or having conversations or creating leads. And then we just go down to the bare minimum and we go, okay, but what are you actually doing? Let's remove the emotions about how you feel about it. What are you doing? So let's say in this example, the person had like 20 conversations, right? And no one was interested. Okay. So for me, I look at that and I go, well, 20 data points and talking to 20 people who are probably cold, looking at like the type of data, the type of person that we're talking to as well, cold people, that's a really, really low total number of people to be talking to about an offer in like the online space who don't know you, who don't know what you have and haven't seen your work before, and there's not a lot of brand credibility, right? This comes back for me to a story when I heard Alex Hormozy speak about this, and I think he did like 300 flyer drops in a day. And he went to his mentor and he was like, oh, like flyer drops don't work, right? And then his mentor said, how many did you do? And he said 500. And he said, like a day? And he goes, no, 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 total, or like 300, 500, whatever it was. And then his mentor goes, huh, well, we do 5,000 and that's our test sample. And Alex Hormozy was like, oh, like I didn't realize the metric that I needed to be measuring this against because I didn't have any previous understanding of how much effort and how much work it potentially took for this specific strategy to work. And he was just so far beneath the metric that would make something unreasonable to not fail, right? And so I think instead of looking at like, oh, what's the bare minimum that I have to do? Like when you are starting and creating a business, I think that the better question to ask is what would be unreasonable for me to not fail, right? If I was to do that. So it would be unreasonable. I said to this client, it would be unreasonable for her who'd done, let's say those 20 conversations. I said, from 20 conversations, I think that the metric you're tracking against and how many is reasonable for you to get a result is going to need to be far more than that. I said, I think it would be unreasonable for you to not get a client if you spoke to 1,000 people. And like, that's a huge number. And that can feel like, holy, like overwhelmingly like, oh my God, I've done 20 and that took me like maybe, let's say an hour at most to have those conversations. And you're telling me I need to do 1,000, right? It does take work. It does take effort. effort, but it compounds as well. Our effort compounds and our marketing also compounds. So yeah, but if you do 20 a day for the next month, then you're going to have, quick math, a lot of conversations, right? And it would probably be unreasonable for you to not get a client off the back of that. And if you did, then we'd have data to say, hey, maybe it's not the conversations, maybe it's what you're saying or how you're having them or who you're having them with. Okay. But oftentimes I find that when we look at the data, typically in small businesses, it's just that there's not enough data points. We haven't actually done enough of the work or the effort to actually create the result. And that's just the harsh truth of it all. And it can be like a little like, oh, that sucks. And you may be feeling that. And it does get to snowball, right? Like if you have these conversations over and over, and then you like, this is not the only strategy of someone just like cold reaching out to people saying like, hey, work with me, right? Like, obviously you need to have a really compelling offer or opportunity that you're providing those people for them to want to say yes to something. But you also need to make sure that you are doing not just like something that would be unreasonable. If you have like, let's say no clients, doing something that would be unreasonable to not get a client, right? And you're also probably pitching it for free or low, like super low ticket in exchange for like getting feedback from it to make it better, to get in front of more people. Okay. Um, the purpose of that is to, I guess, just like help you understand and zoom out and go, okay, like what is the data saying, as opposed to like no one's taking me up on my offer. It's like, okay, well, how many people did you put it in front of? Because if you just said like, hey, are you a runner who lives in Melbourne who, is looking for a running program, and you got in front of 20 runners and those people were like, nah, then perhaps you're not getting it in front of enough people. And so you don't have enough data points, right? Other things that I've had students mention in the past is like, I don't know what the best or the right approach is. Okay. And this is typically like really hard in the start of business because like any approach or strategy can work, but you need to work it. And you also need to leverage, I believe, off of your strengths. So if you're great in groups or on camera or presenting, then like go and find partnerships, workshops, masterclasses, do those sorts of things, right? Get on podcasts. If you are great with like a written format, then maybe it's emails, maybe it's blogs, maybe it's like carousel posts on Instagram, right? Finding the things that work for you, but also making sure that you have like a multi-pronged approach and you're tracking this stuff. Another thing that I've found is that someone said to me before, I don't think that like this specific type of social media posts are super engaging, right? Again, this is an emotion-based response. I don't think it's working. It's like, okay, well, if you don't think it's working, but you don't know, like, have you looked at your insights or your analytics? Can you go back and figure out which post performed well? Like if you've done 10, 30, 100 posts, like go into your historical data and it will show you like which one had the most views, the most reach, the most people who were like not on your current followers list who saw this, right? And then you can sort of pull out the things that are in the top performing ones, even if, some got 20 views and some got 50 views, right? These are not big numbers, but like there must be something better about the one that got 50 views over the one that got 20 views. But when we lean into like what I think is happening or, I feel like this, then of course we're going to be confused. Of course we're going to feel overwhelmed because we haven't got any data. We haven't looked at our data that we do have to make those decisions. So some of these things are like, obviously, like you can go into your analytics on, let's say, Instagram, and you can go and look at that. If you feel like something isn't working, then let's go and see if you're right based on the data, because our feelings may be lying to us, but our data will not. Okay. Other thing, I think sometimes some statements about like, I don't feel like I have a good enough offer. Now, the only way you're going to tell this is if you like get in front of people or you present it to them and then they say no for whatever reason. Okay. And then making sure that it's based on like the offer not being good enough. Okay. So how you would tell that is someone typically saying like, oh, I can't afford it, let me think about it, these sorts of things. Because if the offer was good enough, people would beg, borrow, and steal to like make this work. And I've actually had students who were like in debt, who like went and got a loan. And I'm not saying that that's for everyone, but what I'm saying is that if people feel so compelled and so confident in what you have that they're absolutely almost guaranteed to get the result if they put in the work, then they would likely, if they trust and back themselves, do whatever it takes to get there. And I've had students who've come into our program with that approach, who've, even those who felt like other approaches haven't worked, or other coaches have just, had a shitty approach or hasn't worked for them, or whatever the reason is, right? But we need to make sure that we're basing our assumptions, or we're finding facts to figure out if our assumptions are correct or not. Okay. I also get a lot, I feel like I'm too expensive, or the statement, no one can afford me. Right. So if we say no one can afford me, it's like, do you have any clients right now? Right? Can we just totally eradicate that? And is that just a bit of a emotion-based statement of like, okay, you already have clients. So it's not that no one can afford you, it's that perhaps new people right now. And so what's changed? Have you changed your offer? Have you changed your model? Have you changed, how you present to people? Are they more cold audiences rather than warm? Like, what data can we find to determine what has changed? Maybe like you're just feeling off for the last couple of weeks. And so when you go into these sales calls, you go in and you're like, oh, this person's not going to sign up. And so you have that energy with you. And previously you were like really fucking keen, and you were bubbly, and you were sprightly, and you were like so motivated, and you were on a bit of a roll. Right? That energy really feeds into the people around you, and people feel that. And a lot of people buy emotionally and then justify logically. Okay. So if you're feeling something emotionally, make sure that you are backing it up with your data as well. Okay. So the other one I said, I feel like I'm too expensive. Like, what is that based on? Is that based on everyone else's prices? Is that based on you've had people say you're too expensive? We can go into this in another episode, but too expensive is typically a mismatch between what you're charging and the perceived value. Not the actual value, the perceived value, because people can't experience the value typically until they're inside the program or the package or whatever you're offering, right? So it may even just be the way you're presenting that. It may not actually be the value. You might be like, I know that when my clients get with me and they're working with me, like they get so much value, but people aren't signing up. So we need to have a look at like, okay, where in the process or the funnel is this not working, and what is the data telling us? Okay. I also spoke in our last episode about our lead to sales tracker. I'm not going to go back through that again, but if you want to listen to the episode that I did with Jason Gent, then please go back to that, because we talk about like a lead to sales tracker and looking at the data and making decisions based off that in your business, in regards to like saying like, I feel like I need to be on the gym floor more, was the statement. And then we sort of worked backwards and went, okay, well, I don't want you to be on the gym floor forever or like 10 hours a week. I want you to do what is necessary to get the outcome. So we created like a data-driven metric for him as to how many conversations, which turns into how many leads, which turns into how many sales booked, which turns into how many people sign up. Okay. I think it's just important when we come to data to really look at like how, like, especially with, I think one of the big ones is lead generation. And it's like, okay, well, like marketing's not working, or, my offer isn't right, or I'm charging too much. It's typically that sort of front end where people are struggling the most. And I think the best place to start is looking at like, how many conversations have you had in front of ideal prospects, and like, where have you gotten to in that process in terms of like, are they even interested in the first place? Right? Are you, and so therefore it's like that, if you're not getting interest, I would say that either you haven't talked to enough people or gotten in front of enough people, or your offer isn't like irresistible or no-brainer enough. Okay. So the offer needs to be changed. But if we get someone into a conversation and then the offer should ideally sell itself, but then we're getting through that part and then, maybe we're having a lot of sales conversations, but people aren't converting, then it's probably looking at like the offer sounds good, but the perceived value versus the cost you're charging potentially could be the problem if you haven't given them the cost before they get into the sales conversation with you. So there's so many different things we can look at through this. I'm not going to break all of this down now, but what I am going to do is provide you with a document that will show you your lead to sales tracker, and you can actually do some data driven like decisions based on things in your business rather than your feelings. And this is going to be based on that lead to sale pipeline and figuring out every step along the way. The other thing that I think is important to speak to is when you're feeling an emotion about your business, I need you to know that that is not the time to make a decision in your business, right? Just like you wouldn't divorce your husband or your wife after one heated discussion, likely, okay? Hopefully not. What you would do is you'd probably wait until you felt a bit calmer and you would assess the situation. Like you'd gather data, you'd get evidence from like past experiences and what's been happening and why it's happening. And you'd probably look at like what is and what isn't working, and then you would adjust accordingly. But we're not doing this in our business. We're making these like quick knee-jerk reactions sometimes, and sometimes it's can be like quite detrimental to our business, or we just don't do things for a certain period of time, and that can really impact our business because we're basing it off of our emotions in the moment, not based on our decisions. So the same does go for your business. If this is happening for you and you're feeling quite emotionally driven, take a moment to just stop, get really logical and pragmatic about it, assess the data, review it, and then iterate, right? And if you don't have any data and you're like, oh, well, I don't know, I spoke to a couple of people, but I never tracked it. This is your opportunity to start tracking, but also recognize that maybe if you don't have enough data, it just means you haven't done enough reps yet, right? Because anything can work. You can go door knocking and get sales, right? It may not be the strategy that you want to choose, and that's totally fine. Same as the like cold DMing may not be your strategy, right? It can work. Any approach can work, but you need to have the data to assess it and figure out what is working better than others, and having, particularly with lead gen, I think, a multi-pronged approach so that you're not just doing one thing in that, so that you can be in multiple places and getting multiple people in through the doors through different strategies, okay? Just make sure that you're please working off that data, not off gut feel, because going off of I don't have enough reps or you haven't assessed the data is not how you win in business. So please grab my metrics, the metric tracker in the show notes below, to make sure that you are basing your business off of data and making data-driven decisions, not gut feel decisions. I hope this has helped, and until next time, move swiftly. I have a tiny favor to ask of you, and that is to just hit that subscribe button if you have not done it yet. If you've made it this far, then I hope that this has been valuable for you and for us to get more incredible guests in front of your earlobes and faces. If you're watching us on YouTube, then please do that now. And if you have any feedback or suggestions for me, or something that was a golden nugget that really stood out to you in this episode, I would absolutely love if you flicked me a message over on Instagram at Xenia Wood Official. Until next episode, and in whatever you do, move swiftly.